Hello, friends, our exciting story begins with the performance of a beautiful blonde. The Chosen Heroes. I sincerely congratulate everyone who has come to the world of fantasy. A beautiful girl was holding a magic ball in the air. Her audience was quite young, the high school students did not understand what was happening and how they ended up here. It was quite an unexpected event. While some could not believe their eyes and thought it was a prank, others accepted reality as it was and watched the beauty with admiration. It happened at the end of the day when the classroom teacher was away for a long time. The two friends began to panic, their smartphones were not working, despite the fact that they were in perfect order and fully charged. They started to notice more and more strange details. To their surprise, the floor of the room was made of real clouds. Their excitement was interrupted by a beautiful girl with wings who told them not to worry. Thanks to the resurrection of the great demon lord, you have been summoned to save Fantasia, which is in great danger. As expected, the girl's words did not reassure the listeners too much. Everything happened so suddenly that it seemed like a dream. The girl calmly and with a smile explained that it was she who had called them to this world. The students continued to either panic and express their versions of how it happened or just watch in silence. Soon you will all be transported to the shrine in your imagination. There you will be greeted by a saint who has received my oracle and will make sure you adjust to the fantasy world, helping you from the bottom of her heart. One of the young men dared to ask if he could ask a question, and the goddess gladly agreed. This young man's name is Han Wu, and he is clearly excited about what is happening. He asked if there were levels, skill status windows, and monsters in this world, like in games. The goddess answered with a smile, yes, of course. The boy was pleased with this answer. I also have a question, Chanmi Yun said boldly. If this is a fantasy world, isn't it medieval, like in a novel? Are there princes and knights here too? Yes, the girl with wings answered happily. Then it can be fun, noble goddess. I have a question, another brave man said respectfully. Please, go ahead and ask. This boy's name is Choi Kong Min. Will the most outstanding person among us become a hero? No, the goddess answered in a single word. Then it seems that regardless of our abilities, we are all heroes, said Kong Min. But not all of you are given the same power. Only when you are recognized and blessings of the gods, you can be reborn as a true hero. So, the recognition and blessing of the gods. Thank you for your answer. Fufu, you seem to be a very confident hero. I'm looking forward to your great performance. I wonder if it's just me or if she has a different attitude. Even goddesses like pretty faces, he thought. Goddess, is it okay if I ask you a question too? Of course. Thank you for your valuable time. I'm Eubora, class president. With a sincere smile, the goddess asked what her question was. This world is in crisis and I realize that our help is desperately needed, but because we have been suddenly called away, I'm afraid our family and our teachers are worried. As expected, the most responsible person in the class asked the most difficult question. After a short pause, the goddess answer confused the students and they asked when they could go home. The girl responded to the expected question with a smile. If you defeat the great demon lord, the gods who gave you the blessing will fulfill your wishes themselves. Such a generous promise raised many questions from the students. The goddess responded calmly. The heroes spiritedly poured out lots of questions, but the goddess answered them all diligently. Though, of course, the answers became less detailed as it went on. After everyone had learned the answers to their questions, it seemed that everything was clear and they would soon begin to fulfill their duties. But one of the boys suddenly raised his hand. The goddess was ready to hear his question. But the boy said that he did not have a question, but a request to send him back to Earth. The goddess looked at him carefully and calmly replied with a smile. That their wishes would be fulfilled after they defeated the great demon lord. A little panicked, the boy replied that he had no interest. in becoming a hero, so he wanted to go straight back to Earth. After a short silence, the boy panicked and asked if this was even possible. It's definitely possible, the goddess replied. But before that, can I ask a question first? When we talk about the world where countless lives hang on is on the verge of collapsing, what is the reason behind you turning your eyes away from that and wanting to go on with your normal life? I'm going to do this for my family. How can a guy who is causing anxiety to his family save the world? The guy was very worried about his family's reaction to his disappearance. The class president watched him in silence. She did not think long. The goddess approached the young man and asked him his name. Kenhan-su, the boy replied with concern. My loving parents, after careful consideration, gave me that name. The goddess turned to the other students and asked if anyone else was not interested in becoming a hero like Kenhan-su, but everyone reacted with a smile, considering the boy to be a weakling. Realizing that no one would join him, Kenhan-su continued to watch his classmates in silence before walking into the portal to Earth. Mr. Kenhan-su, you are the one who doesn't fit within this place for great heroes must take your leave now, with the same sincere smile as before, the goddess said. The boy headed for the portal, his classmates shouted a request to convey their greetings to their parents and a promise that they would return soon. I got it, I will convey them all, you horrible sons and daughters, he mentally turned to his friends. See you again on Earth, he thought while going home. The guy appeared in a dark forest with huge trees. For a second he doubted whether he was sent in the right direction. What is this? Looks like I have been dropped off far away from school. After saying that, he heard a rustling behind him and, thinking it was a hiker, he happily asked where he was, but when he turned to the sound, he realized that behind him was not a person, but 3 monsters in armor holding their victim. Realizing the situation he was in, Kenhan-su came to the conclusion that the real opponent is the type who kidnaps high school students to solve the problems of her world. That kidnapper who calls herself a goddess. Of course there is no way she will keep her promises, he thought as he ran away from the predators. Those heroes who are supposed to save the world were sent to the sanctuary city of Prologina. Namely the Grand Temple building. 10 heroes have come here to begin their mission. Heroes who have come to the Fantasia dimension. I sincerely welcome you all, said a woman in a pleasant voice, who was still unfamiliar to us. High school students start whispering about who she is, she's a goddess or maybe she is the saintess, anyway it's another beauty, said one of the boys. Look behind her, he is so handsome, is he a prince? The girls began to guess who the attractive man next to the woman was. She introduced herself as the saintess of the Grand Temple and said that she had been waiting for them here after receiving the oracle from the goddess. She then drew the hero's attention to the man standing behind her. But he continued the conversation on his own. It is an honor to meet the legendary heroes, he said with a bow. I'm the prince of the Swordmaster Kingdom of the North, Elsa's Swordmaster. Oh my god, it's a real prince. The girls were delighted with him. Head maid, the princess is late, said the saintess demandingly. The head maid had nothing to say and just looked at her colleague anxiously. Suddenly, the door of the reception hall opened loudly, and a little girl in a pink dress began to apologize for oversleeping because she had drunk too much the night before. Not surprised by another awkward incident with the princess, the saintess told her. Princess Athena, your honesty is both a plus and a minus, you didn't have to say the second part. Their guests were amazed by this introduction, especially the boys. With a sense of guilt, she asked if it was her mistake again, but in her haste she tripped over herself. The amazement on the faces of those watching this scene did not disappear. The girl sitting on the floor said, the floor of the temple is slippery, which must be the case since I didn't slip even once until I got here. The amazed students continued to stare at her, and then said that the princess is very cute. Her name is Athena Archmazing, she is the princess of the Archmazing Kingdom and the magic instructor for the heroes. The princess of the Archmazing will be supporting you all, alongside Prince Alsus. After the words of the Saintess, one of the guys was able to open his interface and said that a status window appeared. Looking at his cheering classmates, one of the guys said, "Idiots, they are acting like kids on a field trip. You will get to see a lot of stuff like that by raising your levels and skills." Looking at his interface, he said that he gets what blessing is, but wonder what the rest is. "I guess I will first check the hero, which is listed under blessing." The interface says that blessed hero gets automatic translation of languages of friendly races and big experience boost from hunting and achievements. The guy said that automatic translation seems like a useful thing, but he wonders how much the experience boost actually is. It would be a cheat level effect if there is no level cap, the guy thought. But there are too many competitors who got the same blessing. "Saintess, I have a question. The goddess told us to receive God's blessing, but how do we do that?" "That is a good question. To receive a blessing you have to get in favor with a god. Each god has his or her own standards." The heroes got a new message on their interfaces. It said that a certain god looks at the bodies with the perverse smile. This information disturbed the heroes. They had a lot of questions. What are these messages? A certain god, are these really gods? Seeing their concern, the Saintess said with a calm smile, "Every god has different standards, but they are each looking for the one to take down the great demon king." "Does that answer your question?" "It's enough," the boy replied. "The gods are watching you heroes, but please don't forget that their attention won't be eternal. I hope that you all succeed in obtaining a god's blessing." "Excuse me, but what happens if you can't obtain any blessing?" asked the hero with glasses. "Do I really have to care about trash?" This rude answer was delivered with an invariably pleasant smile. It frightened the heroes a bit. But despite this, in a fantasy world full of dreams, their adventure has begun. By the way, Han Su continued to desperately run away from his pursuers. Leaning against a nearby tree, the exhausted guy said he had a hunch something like this could happen. After his run, he recognized that he should go in for sports. However, his rest did not last long. As a spear hit a tree near him, thrown by the monsters chasing him, he thought that there was no time to think anymore. These creatures were definitely not from his world. That damn so-called goddess tricked me. She never had any intention of sending me back in the first place. Kong Han Su was in an extremely difficult situation and tried to think of something. But when he saw that his pursuers were close, he ran away. If this is really a fantasy world, maybe there will be some kind of magical miracle, he thought in despair. After the guy's words, an interface actually appeared in front of him, and Han Su looked at it and asked why it said hero in the curse category. The benefits of this category are much different from those of his classmates. Kong got the translation of the hostile race's languages, and his experience from hunting and achievements is actually greatly diminished. When he saw these characteristics, he was not very surprised. He thought, this is a surefire malice intent on getting rid of me. I can't believe she gave me this kind of punishment in a world where you can level up with a game system. Meanwhile, he began to understand the terrible desires voiced by his pursuers. They wanted his meat and bones. Automatic translation of races that are hostile against me, does it mean I can communicate with them? Han Su imagined that he knew talk no jutsu, so he asked his opponents to discuss this awkward situation. His enemies looked at each other, so he wondered if it worked. But in response he heard them talking about how meat talks and should be eaten. It was not a good idea to engage in a dialogue with them. Meanwhile, the long run had taken its toll, and Kong was too exhausted to continue. Without turning around to face his enemies, the high school student apologized to his parents for passing away before them, and also recalled the culprit behind the situation, a cunning goddess. Suddenly an arrow hit his leg and he was stuck in a tree with his back against it, and could not realize what had happened. Around him were creatures with spears and bows. They spoke in a language he did not understand. The injured Han Su could not understand what was happening. But his pursuers were distracted by them with a desire to eat fairy meat. It seems that a fight is broken out between these fantasy barbarians. I should take this chance to run. Exhausted and wounded, the boy leaned against the nearest tree in confusion. What do I do now? Do I pray to God? No, it's the goddess's fault that this happened in the first place. The guy was furious. Damn it, I would rather die than pray to such a god. Do I have no choice but to die like that? The interface said that a certain god was watching him. The guy thought about whether he should pray to the gods, but when he paid attention to the situation he got into because of them, he quickly abandoned the idea. The main reason as to how I ended up like this was because of a goddess. Should I really be praying to someone? Human, Kong Hansu. Rather than praying to a god. He decided to accept his death. But after message in his interface he said that he doesn't know what it is. But with tears asked to save him. To that unknown voice God's body moved faster than his brain. A god asked why he is alone, Han Su thought angrily. It is because of that damned goddess who kidnapped me, a civilized person, from Earth. But I can't tell them the truth. If this unidentified voice is also a god, they might be that goddess friend. Please save me first, it hurts so much that I think I'm going to die. A certain god is conflicted, the voice said. Is there any other god that will help me? The voice said that a certain god is doubtful. They muttered that there is no way another god would be here. They said that it is a good thing that other gods aren't here. Kong asked if they were an outsider. God asked what the word meant. Realizing that he had not used the best comparison, Han Su thought about how to explain the meaning of the word. An outsider is the Korean slang for people who are outside of social groups, so what if get a strange curse again if I explain it as is? I wonder if there is any way I can turn it around in a good way. After some thought, the guy finally decided to answer, saying that an outsider refers to a lone wolf running through the wilderness. Hearing this beautiful explanation, the girl was very surprised. She said she liked the meaning of the word. The guy, who was sweating with excitement, could hardly contain his joy. Unexpectedly, he heard that a certain god confirms that they are an outsider. Han Su wondered if he was really doing the right thing. However, he had no choice but to trust the stranger and ask him to save him. Without hiding her sympathy for him, she asked if he was also an outsider. The question made him think. I only ended up like this because my classmates were terrible sons and daughters to their parents. I'm clearly an insider, the opposite of outsider. However, in this situation, with a fake smile, he was forced to say that he was indeed an outsider. That's why my classmates were summoned to the temple and I'm the only one here. In order to get revenge and to live, I have to give up my pride and identity. As the enemies approached Kong, the god continued to doubt whether he should help, whether it was the right thing to do. To dispel his doubts, the guy said that it was a common thing for outsiders to help each other. She was probably hesitating because she was a god. I just spat that out because I'm in an urgent situation, but that was a mass. Would they really be considered an outsider if they had friends that would help them? A certain god is saying that all outsiders are on the same level. A certain god has decided to help out the poor outsider, she said as she jumped into the air and used magic. A moment later she used a healing spell on the wounded man. He was very surprised because his pain completely disappeared, and Kong concluded that a real god had helped him. Rising to his feet with ease, Han Su thanked the god and said that he felt just fine. A certain god is looking at the healthy outsider and feels good, she said holding her hands at her sides. His status in the interface has been updated, now the outsider's value is in the blessings section. And his statuses will be cancelled except for death. He also noticed a warning that a terrible thing will happen if he leaves the wilderness. The worried guy thought, this looks so improvised, but what does the hell does lone wolf even mean? Looking around at the danger around him, he asked the god, "If I stop being an outsider and become an insider, are you going to cast judgment on me?" The girl replied that she only helps lone wolves like her. Realizing that he had been saved thanks to her, the boy admitted that he had no reason to complain. "In the first place, I would not have been able to converse with those monsters because of the hero curse, even though I can hear them clearly." The boy dared to continue his escape, and immediately attracted the attention of his enemies. They began to chase the desperate fugitive. The guy realized that now not only his injuries, but also his fatigue had disappeared, and despite his fast running he was not tired at all. On the other hand, the monsters were still exhausted and could not chase him forever. Unable to catch up with his victim, one of the pursuers threw a stone in his direction, which hit him right in the back. The boy heard from God that he was watching him with a nervous heart. Khan could barely stand on his feet, but he was full of energy to continue running away from his armed and hungry opponents. "God, this is amazing. I'm not just saying it to make you feel good, that feeling is actually amazing," he said to the satisfied God. As he continued his escape, he realized that fatigue and injuries were not the only things he was able to overcome. "Should I just bite my tongue if get caught?" he asked. A certain God educates him that he won't die from just that. It said that it was all status except for death, so as long as I'm not killed in one hit, even critical wounds will be reset, he thought, and then noticed that he had reached the precipice. He asked the god if he would be able to survive such a fall, and the god said that he would die from this height. When he saw a dead deer under the cliff, the boy was convinced that her words were true and said that it was heartless, and then asked for at least wings so that he could escape. The goddess just watched him in silence. Meanwhile, the hungry beasts had already approached him. "While I'm in the middle of dealing with this strangely stingy god, cliff in front of me and monsters behind, the time has to come to make a decision," he thought decisively. Realizing the hopelessness of the situation, Han Su decided to take a desperate step. He turned to the monsters and asked for their attention. Then he emphasized that there were many of them and only one prey. "For the one who catches me first, I will give all of my most delicious body parts." In his opinion, this was his only chance. "Rather than sharing, let's do it like this," said the guy on the cliff. The hungry animals couldn't stop salivating, and in a moment they attacked the boy. However, holding an unarmed victim, the greedy crowd could not agree on how to divide the meat. Observing this behavior, Han Su came to the conclusion that these guys love and are obsessed with his meat. "I don't dislike it either," he thought, and grabbed one of them by the shoulder. The predators thought their prey had gone crazy and followed him down the cliff. Khan, surrounded by the soft bodies of the beast-like monsters, could not contain his crazy laughter. A moment later, they landed on the ground with a great noise, a lot of dust was raised, and it was hard to tell if they were okay. Opening his eyes after such a fall, the boy saw angry monsters on top of the cliff, blaming him for the fact that they were left without meat. "To tell you the conclusion first, I didn't die," he thought as he looked around. "My body felt like it was crashed flat, but that was probably just my imagination." A certain god exclaimed from his viability, but Kong answered that it was nothing much. One of the monsters lying on the ground extended a dagger toward the boy, who was surprised that anyone among them had survived such a fall. He saw the monster's window and said, "I can see the status windows of others as well. Its name is Blue Moon's Butcher, which is quite poetic, and its level is also way higher than mine. Is the reason why it survived after falling off from that height without a blessing due to its level?" In fantasy RPG worlds, levels usually rise from experience, and opponents that are more powerful and possess a higher level are bound to give much more experience, the boy thought as he swung a stone to finish off his weakened opponent. Meanwhile, classes were held at the temple to study this world. Levels and blessings, these two things are what can allow everyone to become stronger, either level up by gaining experience from killing beings that possess status windows or receive blessings from gods. However, not everyone was satisfied with this teaching. While some took notes of important information, others died of boredom. Almighty God, please grant me a blessing, I am the talented being you all have been looking for, thought one of the students smugly. Keep it in mind, receiving a blessing doesn't mean it's over, the gods will always be watching you. One of the students asked the saintess the question. Does that really mean gods will be watching over us all day long? Yes, that's right, the teacher answered her. Then will they watch over us while we are washing or taking care of our business? There are no exceptions, the answer of the saintess alarmed the students, especially the girls. Heroes, those beings are not humans, please don't judge gods with the same standards as crude humans. Even when it is put that way, asked a girl who had received several messages from the gods. She wondered if it is really okay when she receives a message like a certain wind god claims that it is no different from air. Class president, isn't it obvious when they are gods? They will at least grant better blessings to those they find more interesting, the blonde replied thoughtfully. After she said that, she received several positive messages. A certain evil god raises his thumb as he praises you, a certain wind god highly appreciates your clean judgment. She looked at her interface in surprise. She got a blessing from a god. She was overwhelmed with joy that she was able to achieve this before the others. The guys didn't understand how it happened, it was quite unfair. What does this skill have to do with the Demon King's subjugation? Well, it is no business if nobody likes me. Wait, what is this scent? The same blonde girl who had received the god's blessing stood in front of the boys, her classmates looking at her with loving eyes. Her blessing is charm, that gives her many advantages. Her body radiates a charming odor at all times and the chances of dominating and captivating the hearts of the opposite sex has increased greatly. Hero Jiang Mayan, please stop using the blessing of charm now. The guys were enamored of her. But what should I do? I don't know how to stop it, Mayan said seductively. A certain innocent goddess dislikes the impure act. It was a new message from the gods that alarmed the saintess. She said that unfortunately it was too late. Too late for what? The males that have fallen deep for my charm. Take another look at your status window, the saintess said calmly. The status window showed the status of curse, and Mayan began to panic, not understanding what a curse of punishment meant. A curse of punishment appears when we are hero, one of the students doubted. Someone suggested that a devil had appeared. Blessings will not be the only things the gods grant to everyone here. They will also bestow curses upon heroes they do not like, the teacher said with a pleasant smile, to which Jiang Mayan panicked and replied that this was the first time she had heard of it. Of course, because I was just explaining it. The girl felt the touch of the boat on her back. And a moment later she screamed in pain. Status punishment involves increasing damage and criticism and a terrible punishment every time she tries to commit an impure act. The girl, feeling unbearable pain, began to apologize and beg to remove this curse from her. A certain innocent goddess will continue to watch over this girl. Remember, once you receive a blessing or a curse, it will not disappear until your death. The effect will increase as the rank does, and a rank, once it has gone up, will never go back down. Jiang was disappointed by this punishment, realizing that even an F-rank curse hurts that much. The princess, with a sweet expression on her face, sincerely asked her not to give up. Holding the blonde's hands, she said, "Curses can be offset by blessings. The pain will also be alleviated once your body and mind become stronger from leveling up. Don't give up so easily." Meanwhile, Han Su had already finished his revenge. But he couldn't understand why his level hadn't changed at all. Standing in front of the pile of bodies, he said, "I've ended the lives of tons of bastards that are above my level. Is it because of the hero's curse or is leveling up this difficult by default? God akin to lone wolves, is there any useful information?" A certain god requests that you address it simply with the term outsider. The guy realized his mistake and changed the phrase. Outsider god, is there any useful information? A certain god informs you that it cannot be said. The guy was disappointed with this answer. It really is an unhelpful god, excluding the blessing. Still, I'll hold it in since that one merit is so nice, he thought. A certain god complained to Kong that just running around was a boring sight, to which the boy agreed. While a certain god suggested that Han Su do something else, he thought about his new characteristics. Although I ran through the forest for hours on end, I didn't feel thirsty, hungry, or even fatigued. Blue Moon's butchers kept looking for him, they ran very close by. Even below the cliff, it's filled with monsters that eat humans. I would have swung at that big mouth if it was next to me. Outsider's god watched closely expecting something interesting. The guy was holding a dagger, he obviously had some kind of cunning plan for these monsters. The butchers smelled a familiar odor. Realizing that it was the smell of meat, they cheered up. But they didn't know what was really in store for them, maybe this time they would be the victims. The beasts continued their search, they could smell the meat, but did not know where it was. Han Su wanted to get out of the forest of the nearest village, but he had no idea which direction he should go. Moreover, the forest is full of man-eating monsters. By the way, our guy got a little stronger after their last meet. That item is the one Blue Moon's butcher was holding, it looks like it is only used for stabbing, but the blade is sharp enough to give the previous owner the ugly name Butcher. A certain god was praying for his soul, the guy was offended by this, as he was not going to die yet. He kept thinking about how to get out of the forest. Even if it is a fantasy world, there is no rule that I should be using things like that. The guy was designing a better weapon for himself. A god said that she gazes with bleary eyes. The guy was getting ready to show something really cool. He thought, magic or swordplay and fantasy-like stuff, right? Hey outstander, do you know what centrifugal force is? The guy asked with a sly smile, but the god who had chosen him had no idea what he was talking about. Seeing a pack of enemies, Kong unleashed his newly created weapon. And went out to meet them with the idea of showing these fantasy man-eating monsters the power of science. As he tried to deliver a blow, he admitted that it was harder than he expected. With my vitality I feel like I will be dragged along by the force and fall if I swing it once or twice, but every time the blessing activates, my legs stop shaking and my breathing calms down. I think I'm getting the hang of how to use the outsider's blessing. Right now I don't need to focus on minor things like cuts or fatigue, which makes everything much easier. As long as I avoid instant death, the blessing will heal me anyway, he thought, and went to attack the nearest monster. In other words, he can just keep fighting while on the verge of death. The beasts were hoping that their prey was exhausted, so they kept their distance and threw stones at him. It seems like they are trying to wear me out by dragging it out. They are nastier and smarter than they look. The stones began to reach their target. And the monsters decided that this was their chance to get closer and get the meat they wanted. But in reality, it was just a trick by Kong. He instantly reacted by striking the enemy with the thought that those petty tricks will be paid back in the same way. The guy defeated his opponents in a flash, and his plan was effective. A certain god very slightly raises their assessment of him. Han Su replied that the god is really stingy for that. Approaching the still-living opponent, the guy warned him that he should not move, otherwise the guy would finish him off. After that, Kong asked where people live. It may be a useless question since this one can lie to me if he wants to, the guy thought. The monster was surprised that his meat was talking. But he pointed in the direction where the people lived. The distrustful boy thought that he could catch another one to confirm this information. Next question, what kind of species are you? The monster asked in surprise. Meat is stupid. Kong threatened to smash his head if he didn't answer the previous question. I'm Knoll. Meat, spare me, I answer all things, he said. With a kind and sincere smile, the guy thanked him for the information, and then said goodbye and finished off his opponent. I said I wouldn't hurt them if they answered truthfully, but I never said that I would spare them, the guy thought. A certain god said to a distrustful outsider that this one monster is an actual gnoll. I'm the one who found that out, you know. The gnoll he saw in the game looked way more adorable. By the way, a gnoll is a bipedal monster that often appears in fantasy. It is often described resembling a hyena because of a setting. Is it the difference caused by commercial issues or from the sense of realism as they are trying to kill me, the guy wondered. After that, he began to look at his stats, but after killing so many enemies, nothing changed. Meanwhile in the temple. Official training starts tomorrow. I will be teaching swordsmanship and Princess Athena will teach you magic, the prince said. You may choose any field you are interested in. May I learn both? The button clicker asked. Of course, you can give up during the lesson if it is too hard. That won't happen, he answered the prince. Another question was, will it be okay to skip these 2 masterships? At first the prince was surprised, but then he answered that it was possible if they did not need the greatest swordsmanship and magic of their kingdoms. Then, can I leave the temple in my free time? Asked the boy who was bored with this atmosphere. Of course, the prince replied, while the bootlicker looked at him realizing that he was unlikely to be a worthy competitor. Are there any more questions? No, the previous guy said. The heroes received a notification that a certain immature god was showing his interest. That evening, one of the students continued to think about what to do. He thinks that training is unnecessary, that is for the extras that don't have any cheating-like skills. The main character has his own way, he thought. In his thoughts, he decided to leave the training for others, while he himself, being the main character of the fantasy world, will explore the ruins and labyrinths with cute and lovely comrades. He believed that this way he would easily succeed. The next day is morning. All heroes who wish to follow the path of a knight can follow me. You can change any time if it doesn't suit you, so don't worry about it. Prince, what about magic? Asked a guy with a short hairstyle. Where do I learn magic? It seems like Princess Athena drank too much last night, but she is a hard worker, she will be here soon, the prince answered awkwardly. People who will learn magic, please wait here. While the others were discussing how the night went in this place, a guy with great ambitions was looking at his status window. A look of surprise appeared on his face. As he received somebody's blessing. This one is special, it says that he is the world's most special chosen main character. It is just him the only one who can see and feel this special blessing. Seems like the answer is right here, he thought smugly. Choi Kongmin thinks he is still the best even though he doesn't have a clue. Well, good luck, he thought. If a guy like you tried your best, then you will at least gain an A-rank position as the main character's rival. With that, he went to look for an opportunity to become the best himself. City Plaza of Prologina, City of the Grand Temple. Walking around this place, the guy thought he was in the right place. A fantasy should definitely start right here, he said as he entered the Mercenary Guild. Everyone in the building looked at the newcomer. Welcome. Seems like this is your first time. What brings you to the Mercenary Guild? The girl asked politely and with a smile. I came here to register as a mercenary, the guy answered confidently and boastfully. A standard route for any main character of the fantasy genre. A must for a main character who doesn't want to get tangled up in other crap, Hanwoo thought. Someone in the audience couldn't stand it and said, this isn't a place where a greenhorn like you should be. Are you that eager to die so early? Stop spewing stupid crap like this and go back to your hometown, now, said the beautiful red-nosed woman. I have seen a good number of hot-headed boys like you becoming mercenaries and then dying, she said with a serious face. Here it is. The effect of my blessing, main character buff, he thought as he looked at her. Hey, are you listening to me? This beautiful mercenary woman with a nosy disposition, is definitely a princess or a noble of high standing in disguise, thought Oh Han-woo. This is the fate of a main character. It's undoubtedly the effect of a special blessing, thought the pleased boy. I don't want to go back, though. Oh, really, the girl angrily said. If you're that worried about it, why don't you accompany me? It isn't a good habit to judge books by their cover, the guy said, throwing up his hands. You've also experienced that many times before. Am I wrong? The girl looked at him with an interested smile. You have got me there, she replied. Turning away from her, the guy could not contain his joy. He was really special in this world. I can't tell you much about it right now, but I am a chosen one, Han-woo said confidently, but the girl didn't understand what he meant. I would have had a hard time talking to a beauty like this, so smoothly back on Earth, but here, I'm a hero who will be saving this world, the guy thought, enthusiastic about this idea, and then received a notification that a certain immature main god is laughing their ass off. The girl wondered how those chosen abilities stack up. Han-woo replied that he would find out later. Meanwhile, somewhere in the forest, several monsters were injured in the battle against Han-soo. One of them said that the human settlement was not in the west, but very far away. As an additional argument, he said that he couldn't lie to a man as strong as him. The guy thanked me for the information and finished his business. He said that these guys are unexpectedly honest. They're so crude that you can immediately tell when they're lying. The outsider god was just silently watching. The human village is in the west. I don't know the exact distance, but I confirmed it by asking a bunch of gnolls, so there can't be any mistake, the guy thought with satisfaction. My desperate fight with the gnolls turned into something more like a brief hunt, as I beat more of them. I had gone from prey to a seasoned hunter overnight. Is this some kind of hidden talent? He asked the other outsider with a smile. Yes, of course, he mentally answered himself. I sustained plenty of heavy wounds while I was learning how to hunt. I would have never learned how to fight this quickly without my outsider blessing. All of Han-soo's clothes were torn after the hard fights. It's nice that it also lets me keep my composure, he said out loud. Since I didn't go insane even after being inflicted by so many heavy wounds, how long will it take for the village to show up? I gotta meet the natives of this fantasy world, he said determinedly. A certain god grumbles and says they're real sorry about it. Do you want me to die? He asked in disbelief. A certain god says that they don't care what happens. How cold, even though you gave me a blessing. Meanwhile, someone was already watching him from the bushes. Turning a little, he noticed it was another gnoll. He rushed at it, shouting that he wanted meat. This time they were one-on-one, so Han-soo finally dared to take his trophy dagger and stabbed his opponent. However, immediately afterwards, he was attacked by two more from behind. There really is no end to these guys, and no matter how many I kill, he said, as he continued to fight against his enemies. During his time in this forest, he had mastered his weaponry and learned how to fight monsters that were higher in level than him. It is really weird. Why I'm not leveling up, he said after defeating the next pursuers. I must have killed dozens of guys with higher levels than me. What is the problem? A certain god is getting uneasy. Standing in the forest, he heard something indistinct. I guess I can hear the language of a friendly race that I can't understand. Is it the fairies again? He thought. Let's look around carefully. Considering they shot arrows at a pitiful person being chased by a carnivorous plant. Their definition of friendly might be different from the one I'm familiar with. The guy looked behind the tree and was surprised. There were 3 armed men there, and it was their language he could not understand. 2 swordsmen and a woman who is an archer. Are they mercenaries? The girl noticed him and said something. After which an arrow flew in his direction, but it hit a tree. The guy was seriously frightened by this cold reception. The mercenaries continued to talk and were on guard, holding their weapons. The guy tried to explain that he was just looking for a settlement nearby. But he remembered that they did not understand each other. These people are the first humans I've met here. For now, let's put my dagger away, he thought. The swordsman watched his movements carefully. Han Su fell to his knees and said he was surrendering, adding that he was against violence. Seeing his behavior, the mercenaries relaxed, but did not relax their attention. Of course, nothing's changed. We can't talk with each other. But humans don't only communicate with words. Body language that shows an inclination towards avoiding conflict and fighting. A cordial voice that doesn't put the other person on edge, that is enough, he thought. He continued to hold his hands up in the air, waiting for the next steps of the people he met. We can't hold a complicated conversation this way, but this much should be communicated, right? The mercenaries began to talk about something, smiles appearing on their faces and their eyes becoming kinder. However, a moment later, the girl aimed her crossbow at Han Su. Covering his face, the frightened boy begged her to stop. This alien doesn't bite, I'm a good one, he said with a stupid smile. The guys were lucky and took pity on him. He looked at the girl in surprise, she was saying something to him. However, out of all these words, he recognized only his name. After that, the other two mercenaries also started talking to him. He could not answer anything because they would not understand each other anyway, but judging by their facial expressions they were not hostile. I was able to use gestures to at least let them know what my name was. But other than that, I can't understand a single thing, he thought and continued to smile in the rather awkward conversation. It doesn't help that foreign languages was always the subject that lowered my GPA. It's a relief that I was able to meet friendly people. At least these people didn't start by shooting at me with arrows, unlike the fairies, plus I don't need to worry as much about running into monsters. I can't see their status windows, but TM sure that fully armed mercenaries would be stronger than someone like me who's level 1. An outsider god was quite bored with this adventure. A certain god emphasizes that you are not acting like an outsider. The guy agreed with this, but the situation demanded it. A certain god whines at you not to talk to them half-heartedly. It's normal to speak more casually as you get closer to someone. A certain god says to stop acting like you are close. Kong did not know what to say to him next. I was able to meet people, but I'm still only able to have conversations with the god. However, thanks to using body language, I was able to find out what these people's names were. This hairy old man is named Gary. I speculate that he is the leader of this party. He carries that outrageously large sword without showing a hint of tiredness. Do I have to have that kind of weapon if I want to take on a large fantasy monster? Anyway, this is a fantasy standard. But I wonder how strong he really is, his arm looks so strong. A certain god chortles. Of course it's going to be nothing compared to a god like you. We're just humans, the boy said, attracting the attention of one of his companions. Putting his hand on the guy's shoulder, he said something to him and laughed. Of course, Kong had no choice but to start laughing as well, even though he didn't understand. By the way, this young man's name is Cole. He's smaller than Gary, but he has a seasoned, strong body and laughs often. He has a longsword on each waist. Does he really use those swords for dual wielding that is like the showpiece of every fantasy? Later, he was distracted by a girl. She also started to tell him something, but he said he had no idea what she was talking about. Misa is this party's ranged attacker. She uses a huge crossbow made of steel. Based on the size, I don't think its primary purpose is to fight people. She pointed somewhere and Han Su asked if she wanted to show him something. Looking closer, he saw smoke on the horizon. If it's not from a forest fire, it should be chimney smoke rising out of a house, he thought hopefully. He was pleased that he would finally find other people, but it angered the outsider god. A certain god comments that you are not acting like an outsider. The guy simply agreed to this. A certain god looks at the insolent outsider with displeasure. I'm just pretending to get along so I can escape from this forest, Han Su justified. At one point, the team accompanying him became alert. He did not realize that they had noticed. But a moment later they were attacked by gnolls. They were incredibly hungry, so they didn't pay attention to what kind of prey they chose, they were just interested in meat and bones. The party of mercenaries stood steadfastly and talked about something. The boy was surprised to see so many monsters, but did not feel any danger. It's the first time I'm seeing so many of them after the cliff. Were they waiting in ambush? Everyone stood ready for battle, and Kong Han Su was behind the experienced fighters with one dagger in his hand. When the enemies got to a comfortable distance, the team captain struck. After such an attack, the hyenas began to say that this meat was dangerous. A moment later, Cole jumped out at them, swinging his two swords. And then easily dealt with the enemy. There were a lot of monsters, so they surrounded the team of mercenaries and decided that they would catch them when the people were exhausted. A controversy arose among them, while some suggested attacking them at close range. Others began to squeal that they should wait until they were exhausted. Without hesitation, the girl began to load her crossbow. And taking aim. And fired at the enemy. The gnolls realized that she was also dangerous and that their distance was not close enough to their opponents. The girl calmly took out another arrow. And began to load her crossbow. But she didn't have time to do it. Behind her, the enemy was already ready to attack the smallest prey. For a moment, Cole was afraid for her. But their new friend was able to cover his friendly mercenary. A certain god is uncomfortable. Outsider god, please look over just this much. Since humans are social animals before anything else. I really need help from these people, he said as a gnoll attacked him. However, he was very nimble and managed to avoid the enemy's blow, and then inflicted a fatal wound on him. The conflict between Han Su and the god continued. A certain god says it's none of my business. Well, that's true as well, the guy replied as the enemies recognized his strength. They're completely flocking towards me, a level 1, Kong said smugly. His comrades were already bored, and there were no more people willing to attack them. It looks like everyone's safe, the boy said. His friends turned to him in surprise. If it wasn't for you guys, I would have been in trouble. Suddenly, the guy was scared, not understanding why Misa was aiming at him. Hey, Misa. You're joking, right? We worked hard so the gnolls wouldn't stick to, the girl replied with a smile without listening to him. And then shot her arrow. Right into the guy's body. He was very disappointed that this happened. His former comrades continued to discuss something standing next to him, while Han Su cursed this world. Han Su was lying unconscious while the mercenaries watched him closely. Good job, Misa, our plan ended up going awry because of these gnolls, this is for the better, the girl replied with a smile. Thanks to the gnolls going crazy we were able to find out how dangerous he was. I thought he'd be weak with how skinny he was, but not only was it bothersome that he kept chatting in a strange language, he fought better than I expected. It would have been dangerous had we gone ahead with our original plan, the captain replied. It's a bit of a shame, but it can't be helped. I don't think this guy would willingly be sold as a slave. We should grab the dagger he was using. Why? It's probably just cheap trash. Since we can't sell him as a slave, we should get whatever we can and also. Who knows? Maybe it's more valuable an item than we think. You guys don't believe me? I saw it earlier, said the captain to his colleagues when a smile appeared on their faces. The decoration on the dagger was that of fairy royalty. Really? It's a treasure of the fairies? Even if it's just an imitation, it should fetch a high price. Hurry you are Cole, more gnolls might come our way. Everyone's worn out, so we can't fight anymore, said Gary. Got it, Cole replied and asked the leader if he wanted to see something interesting. He didn't let go of his weapon even as he died, he said with a sneer. Mia was more cautious and said, don't let your guard down, I shot him in the chest, but it didn't hit his heart. He might still be alive. Is that so? The guy said, swinging one of his swords with the intention of finishing Han-Su off. This should be fine then, right? Cole said with surprise. Because he was able to see the status windows of his opponent. There are two conditions that allow one to look at another's status window. You can see it either when someone shares it with you or when you peek at it with a special blessing. Cole worriedly told the team that something was wrong. There is a necessary requirement for a status window to be visible, the target has to be alive. Han-Su suddenly stabbed his enemy in the neck. Mercenaries were shocked, overwhelmed with fear at the loss of their comrade, they reached for their weapons. However, this did not bother the young man, who was filled with hatred and a desire for revenge. Under the screams of his comrades, Cole fell to the ground dead. In a panic, Mia and Gary tried to guess what was wrong with their opponent and how he managed to survive, and the girl suggested that he was actually a demon. Gary noticed with concern that his hands were shaking. KGH. My sword, I'm way too worked out from the fight just now, he said, as a moment later Mia shouted that the enemy was in front of him. Turning, he saw Kong approaching him with incredible speed. And in a moment he struck with his fairy dagger. The guy decided that the best option was to suddenly deal with the clumsy, exhausted enemy fighting at close range, but he paid for this mistake by being hit by a crossbow arrow. However, this time he had the advantage of the battle, calmly taking the arrow out of his body, he turned to the side with a smile and said something to the girl that she did not understand. She understood only her own name from these words, she was frightened by the fact that a real beast was standing in front of her. So she began to apologize and tremble with fear out of desperation. They were left fighting one-on-one. The guy standing in front of the girl could see the anger on her face, he understood her tone and behavior. She was begging him to spare her. With a calmer face, he said something incomprehensible to her. In fear of death, the girl did not understand his intentions. And kept begging him to stop. That really hurts, I can't believe she'd shoot something this lethal at another human, Kong said after he finished his work. I thought it'd somewhat fit, but it's kind of uncomfortable. Maybe because it's a woman's fitting. At this point, the god who accompanied him could not stop laughing, and then said that he respects an outsider's hobby. However, the guy answered unhappily that it was not a hobby at all. She was the only one with a similar build to me, the other two were wearing stupidly big and heavy armor, however, this still did not save them. I think I can use this, I should take it with me, said the guy holding a trophy crossbow. I couldn't figure out why those bastards attacked me, but at the last second, the status window appeared and disappeared. She had a blessing even though she's not a hero. Is getting a god's blessing more common in this world than I thought? A certain god says that's none of their concern and asks where you're headed now. I'm going to the village as planned, Han-Su replied. I even got some nice compensation from these villains, said the guy holding a wallet with their money. So even if I can't communicate, I'm sure this money will make things work out somehow. A certain god reminds you of what just happened when you tried to escape being an outsider, the boy simply agreed. They continued their journey together to the nearest settlement. Meanwhile, other heroes were just starting their training. I'm sorry. I'll do my best to compensate for being late. The princess told her students. Well, to start with, I guess I should explain what magic is. They say that long ago, in the continent of Fantasia was no magic at all. As she continued her boring story, her students began to discuss their first day. It's all about real-life use and practical application, I read it in a novel before, if you apply calculus to magic, you can become a archmage in an instant. I protected my purity, knowing this day would come, said the student with the glasses. You're saying you protected it for real, the guy behind him said with a mocking tone. Pathetic, magic is chemistry, I'll show you guys the first ever atomic spell, a geek girl said. Be quiet. You guys are distracting the guys that are trying to actually focus on the lesson, the head of the class replied with displeasure, while she had been taking notes on the princess's every word. You don't seem to know fantasy, since you're a model student, you won't become an archmage just from knowing the history of magic. Yeah, magic is all about talent. You need to become familiar with mana. Princess Athena addressed all the students, saying that she also does not like unnecessary theories and that talent is really the best thing. Since talent is most important when it comes to magic, the explanation about the founder of magic was necessary. Everyone wondered what she meant when she said the founder of magic. I'll say this again, but magic is a field wherein talent is more important than anything. And what decides that talent is naturally your bloodline and artificially your educational connections, don't forget that, she said with a smile as she demonstrated the magic fire. So, what do you think about this story and its characters? Thanks for watching, subscribe to the channel if you don't want to miss the next episode and leave your comment below the video.